Hello and welcome. This is Voices in the Dark, and I'm Andrea. And today I'm interviewing my brother, Romeo.
Pleasure. Thank you all for having me.
It's going to be good fun. Specifically, I'm going to talk to you today about Dungeons and Dragons and just your general experience with it.
Yeah,
Let's get some drinks.
What are we having today?
It's just some Glenlivet. It's some fairly standard whiskey. It's not the most expensive kind, but it's quite tasty and sweet. I like it. It's not bad. I was going to get some Macallan for us, but they never seem to have it in stock at the supermarket.
Must be an item on. What's the line from Anchorman 2? Oh no, 1. It stings the nostrils.
It's 60%. Wait, 100%. What is it? How's it go?
60% of the time it works every time.
That's the one.
That's good. Whiskeys that feel like napalm on the way down, I struggle to enjoy them, but the slightly more subtle ones, they're good.
Mm. So. Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
It's, funnily enough, it's something that's becoming really, really popular more and more lately. I've noticed that it's becoming okay to like it in mainstream media. I feel that Critical Role, the online show Critical Role, had a big impact on that. But what drew you to it? Because you started playing before I did. I played, I think I remember once. I might have even gotten you to play with it.
Yeah, I still remember that night.
Me
and your friend PG.
Yeah, that's the one. And we tried to play it because I'd been given as a gift like the starter set from, I want to say 1999 or something like that.
God, that had to have been 3rd or maybe 2nd edition. Jesus.
Yeah, I think it was just Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh wow. I remember taking it more seriously than he did, bearing in mind I was 6 at the time and he was 18.
It wasn't the easiest thing to get into, and not having an experienced player to play with, we didn't really take it anywhere.
Yeah.
But
I just went along with whatever you said. Well, I made decisions, but when you told me it didn't work, I said, okay, I didn't know any better, I guess.
Yeah. I think it was a lot harder to, if you weren't experienced, to kind of go with it and kind of play along with it. Something I like about the new edition is that it's very, very easy to just kind of make judgment calls about doing cool stuff.
I have found that myself as well, actually, as a relatively new to DMing. It's, someone tries to do something that maybe is not rules as written necessarily. It's easy enough to say, okay, make this check, or for example, roll these dice to determine whether you can be successful at this and for it to be appropriate. And yes, you're right, judgment calls. It is friendly to, in the moment, judgment calls.
But let's go back a couple of years.
Yeah.
You started playing, and it's become quite a big part of your life. You're running a game as a DM. I think you were playing as a player in another one. I don't know if you're still doing that. Not at the moment.
That game's on hiatus, but it doesn't matter.
But what brought you to it? What was it that got you into it?
I think you, above all people, know as well. It's from the moment I could walk and talk, playing pretend was my jam. Whether it was making T-Rex noises and making your arms like that.
My favorite is always the memory of the Star Wars noises that came from the toilet. Toilet time was, lightsaber noises and laser noises.
Well, listen. Sometimes a toilet experience is a Death Star run.
It's just amusing to be like...
Sometimes you need to use the Force.
Oh dear God, not too much Force. Don't want to tear something.
Oh,
it's just amusing to be like, to hear and be like, oh, he's having a good poop.
I don't know what to say. I always love playing pretend above all else. There's something cathartic about being able to be something that, I guess at the end of the day, you're not. Because, why does anyone like to watch Iron Man shoot lasers or something like that? Because we like to imagine a world where that's possible, where you don't have to get up at 7 a.m. in order to work the deep fryer at someone who's going to scream at you and physically assault you because the chicken nuggets were too hot. Or too spicy.
Very specific example.
Literally happened in the news like a week ago.
Oh, okay. It sounded like you were doing. I'm like, he doesn't work for McDonald's.
No, I don't. I was trying to use a topical example.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, everyone. But no, I think we can all relate to the idea of escapism and D&D is quintessential escapism. I think because it's next door to improv, and part of the reason I think improv doesn't take off as much is because there's more of an onus on following the scene in improv. And what I mean by that is, if someone says, hey, why are you screwing in those bolts over there? All of a sudden, the whole yes and thing, which is part of improv, is go with the flow. There's still a yes and element to D&D, of course, but you pick every element of who you are.
Yeah. I think you're allowed to be something very defined, and you're in a defined world. The few bit when I took for like one trimester, or whatever it was called, one, like, how we had electives in New Zealand in high school. I took one slot of what do they call it? It wasn't theater group. It had another name, but it was drama.
Yeah.
And I just, at that age, I was way too autistic to do that. Like, it did not compute the freedom of you can do whatever, just explore. I'm like, I need a few parameters.
I had the opposite problem. I took it, so I realized I needed parameters, but by taking it too far.
I just go, if I don't have some guideline, I go blank, because there's too many my brain thinks too many things, and so I can't pick one.
See, my problem is I just pick a direction, for better or worse. Sometimes it's great, and sometimes you say, don't set the Pope on fire with that, use this.
Okay, well...
I was 12. But, guidelines are good. Guidelines are good, and... I think it's the same reason people love Minecraft or love Legos. It's a sandbox. And you are even if it's just your own character, that level of control, and that level of control provides a level of escapism, ironically.
Yeah. I really enjoyed. I've been watching Critical Role's their second campaign. And I'm starting to think Dungeons and Dragons is the best thing ever invented. Well, I mean, I say that about a few things. Not a lot of things, but I say that about a bunch of things quite often. It's kind of my go-to phrase. But for Dungeons and Dragons in particular, I really liked it's a fun way of exploring sides of yourself. It's problem solving at its finest, trying to figure out together a strategy for not getting killed by a dragon, or, convincing the town master to, let you kidnap the princess, whatever. Like, it's quite an interesting sort of engaging puzzle aspect of it, but also allows you to explore, a character. What I found really intriguing about that, as I watched Critical Role, and I started kind of playing my own character in my own games, was that it was kind of a freedom. Becoming someone else is a freedom in a way, for people that don't have a defined particular sense of self. Like, I don't know who I am.
Or perhaps a sense of self that contradicts with how they were born. I'll keep it vague in case they ever watch this, but one of my players has, and it's not a big secret or anything, they've said that they don't 100% identify with the body they were born with. And so they tend to play characters that go against that in a quite significant way. Not just in terms of sex, but also in form and stuff, They prefer someone with fangs and claws and that sort of thing. And it really is a privilege to get to... Because I speak to this person outside of the game and in the game, and it is a real privilege to watch the difference when they get to be that person. It's a, I guess, a safety mask, the best way I can phrase it. It's a mechanism by which they can feel free, and so let their true self shine forth. They don't feel like they have to meet an expectation or anything like that. And watching that is a real privilege, and I'm really glad this person's in my campaign.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's quite fun to see, like, both that aspect. But for me, and I think I've seen a couple of other people, it's this thing where in our normal lives, we don't have a focused, approved identity. like whether, I mean, some people it's more specific, like they're gender fluid, let's say. But for me, like I don't have a set, this is who I am. I don't think so. I'm adaptable. I change. Like 1 minute I feel one way, 1 minute I feel another, and it's quite fun to be able to narrow it down into something, but that it's not a commitment. It's not like, okay, I choose to be a man, or I choose to be a woman, or I choose to be someone that cares about this. Like it's very kind of focused on I'm a half orc paladin that loves this. Like, and it's temporary, but for a little while you get to be a very defined thing, and it's interesting to explore. That's just something I found.
No, yeah, I definitely think so. And piggyboarding off of that, there is also some people just like to be able to do things that they wouldn't be allowed to do normally. And I'll give my players some slack every now and then in terms of doing that sort of thing. But yeah, sometimes you do just want to, like, no, that guy who cheated us, I'm going back into the magic shop and I'm gonna, like, crack his head open. Or, and it's almost a bit tragic in a way, because I think especially in the times we live in, people crave pretending, and I use the word pretending with a heavy heart, but pretending to live in a world where good guys are good and, evil does not triumph.
Well, depending on the kind of game you run. I mean, some people do that in D&D as well, right? Something else that I really come to admire Matt Mercer when he runs his game, because he takes it seriously and in an earnest sort of way. He likes the game and wants to create a story with his players. And what I really admire is that he's an impartial arbiter in most cases. I think almost always. He lets them do what they want and makes the consequences fall upon their head. It is up to them. He just creates the environment and the fantasy, and he draws them into his own mind. But then within those set of rules, he provides an impartial kind of world where if you do something really, really stupid, you have to live with the consequences. And I find that really, really interesting.
I think he said so himself many times in different interviews. It's not compelling if there isn't a real fear of danger. It's something I think also in a similar vein George R. R. Martin said when people asked him why he kills so many characters, is he wants the fans, or he wants readers to be genuinely afraid when shit goes south, and to feel genuine gratification when the heroes pull through.
And what I like about George is that it's never gratuitous. A lot of people will kill a character for the shock factor. George will start writing a situation, and if that character would do something stupid because that's in their nature, that would get them killed, he kills them off because that's what would happen. He's not seeking out like, oh yeah, I want to kill this guy off. He puts them in a situation and goes, what would happen to that character in that situation? Oh, he would charge into battle even though he's outnumbered. Well, that means he would die. And so that person dies. I think there's something in that, something compelling in our choices, having our choices mattering.
There is something compelling because...
Mattering? Is that a word? Why does that sound wrong?
I'm not sure, but now it sounds wrong for me, so thank you. The importance of having choices matter when they go wrong is that it means it also matters when they go right. It's important to have shit go bad when things go wrong, because it also means it goes well when things are right. And you reward players for making the right choices, for being tactical or for being intuitive. You ever played a video game that was too easy?
I think these days they make them too hard in weird places. Like it'll be easy all the way through, and then you'll get stuck on one thing that is insanely hard for no reason. But having played video games since the 80s, I'm more used to video games that are way too hard as opposed to video games that are too easy.
But how satisfied did you feel when you finally drove the spear through Diablo's heart or whatever? It's real risk carries real reward. It's not compelling otherwise. So that's important. That's something I definitely try to do as well. I wasn't the best at it because I deep ended it with my DMing. I had been playing maybe 3 months, and I said, you know what, fuck it. Learn as you go along.
What made you make that decision to want to DM?
I've always been what made me want to DM?
Suddenly, like you were playing 3 months in, you say, and then you wanted to run your own game. Why?
So the first character I ever made, I probably went a little too in depth with the backstory. He was this noble character because Game of Thrones was still good at the time.
How long ago was that?
A year. And so I borrowed various elements from that. I designed a noble house that had its own history and how it fit into this world. And I probably went a little too in depth with it. It's like, I had different cousins mapped out and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then I looked at the end result and I was like, wow, this is cohesive. Like I realized I had a hunger for lore building.
Okay.
I love world building. You've seen me and you and I played Minecraft before, or you've seen me with Legos and stuff like that. I don't know what it is specifically about it. I wish I could say a specific answer, but
I don't know about you, but for me, being able to create your own world is satisfying because the real world makes very little sense. And being able to create one that is a reflection of your mind and how you would have things and how you would want things to run, it's just satisfying because it's just something that gives me pleasure to be able to have the environment that I create sort of reflect my beliefs or values or ideas. It's fun. It's fun to kind of use your imagination that way. And I particularly think it's amazing to be able to create something that then you can share with others. As a kid, like I would just daydream a lot. But you can't really pull people into that very well. I suppose you can if you're an excellent storyteller. That wasn't in my skill set back then. But as a DM, that's kind of what you have to do. You crafted a world, and your main job is to pull other people into your imagination and help them build more of it with you. So I guess it's an element of control, but also then freedom in the sense that you allow other people to mess with your creation a little bit within the parameters of it, but still what would you do? Where would you take it? Which is kind of, it's fun. It's a form of playful.
Absolutely, and I've always been a convention bucker, I like to think, in many aspects. And part of what drew me to that is because I was, I looked at not just Critical Role, but other different D&D stuff in the past, and I was looking, okay, these particular monsters are always the bad guys and stuff like that. I was like, what if this guy was a bad guy instead? What if I always like to ask the question, why aren't we doing it this way? And what happens if we do? And I love that campaign, and I'm really sorry it ended up falling through purely because, obviously we have a mantra I have part of this server where we all play in each other's games, and the mantra is IRL comes first, which is in real life comes first. And personal things clash, you know how it is, and so that fell through. But I'm partly grateful for that as well, because I was able to take everything I learned through the ups and downs of, trial and error. I gave my players way too many magical items way too soon, so they were kicking ass, and so I turned up the difficulty, but I destroyed a couple of them a couple times. But I was able to take all of what I learned and start fresh in this new setting that I've got at the moment, and that's something I'm really excited about in terms of, because it's a very unique setting as well.
The live streaming aspect of your game, but just D&D games in general, I think is really, really interesting. I think it's a new art form and a new sport. Because basically you have I mean, it's kind of competitive, but it's not really. It's more collaborative than competitive. But there is an element of competition with it. But collaborative public storytelling, it's quite compelling if done well.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you know other people are watching and it's a performance, so it's acting, but it's an improv story that could go anywhere. I think that's really, really interesting art form, and I think it's bound to grow.
Yeah, you're talking to a guy who would do the improv, who's done improv shows before. I mean, I was captain of the theater sports team back in high school. I don't know if I ever told you.
No.
So yeah, it was. I mean, this is improv. This is just a natural extension of improv, and improv does touch some of the same markers that you spoke of competitive acting is the best way I can describe it.
And it's good fun because you're playing off each other, and if you truly, I think the key is for people to be invested in being genuine. Like, what would my character do in this situation? And following, like, you have to create an interesting character first. Otherwise, what would my character do is a boring answer to a boring question. But if your character is interesting and has a compelling story to tell, and their growth is compelling, then what will my character do becomes extremely interesting if you follow it through genuinely, as opposed to I want to win the game. You know?
Yeah.
I was amazed by Sam Riegel in particular from Critical Role will always do the role play, even if it's detrimental to the group or to the character.
I think Travis as well is Travis Willingham is.
I mean, they all do it. Yeah. They all do it quite well. But I was amazed by the amount of times where Sam would just do something that you're like, oh, that's not the optimal decision. But he might get, like, in one case, he might have died. But he did the right thing. Like, and that's what he would have done because of what the situation was. And it's really, really fun and interesting as a concept.
I think as a DM as well, you have a responsibility to encourage that. And that's something I try to do. And I think that's, for those of you who may be more familiar with D&D will know what I'm talking about. That's what part of what the inspiration mechanic is meant to be for. It's a little tool that you can use to reward your players for stuff that isn't strictly meta-gamey.
Yeah, and in particular, things that are detrimental to the goals of the players, but are in line with the expectation of the character, right? Exactly. So especially role-playing a flaw generally gets some inspiration.
And
right?
It's tricky to reward that without making it obvious. Remember in the previous campaign, one of my characters really confided and through sort of the sharing of a lot of negative feelings, fostered a good relationship with a NPC that I had designed. And so I was really interested to see where that was going to go, and I was fostering that. And I ended up rewarding them in the form of this NPC was fortunately a owner of a magic shop.
Okay.
And so what I was able to do is to role play in an aspect of because they bought a bunch of stuff, and then there was this last little magic item which was not as expensive as the other ones, but he said, "You know what? Take it." And I just hope that it came across that I took the time to do great role playing with this character. That's why I hope that lesson came across, because it was truly a spectacular moment, and that's why I felt it was important to do that.
It's good fun, and I'm excited because I think we're at the beginnings of something quite interesting. It's gaining popularity, it's becoming more mainstream, so more people are comfortable trying it out as an idea. Right about at the same time where virtual reality is gaining power, within 20 years, people will be able to actually literally create a world. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. But it's a fun exploration. And in many ways, it reminded me of, funnily enough, something else that I think is one of the best things ever, as I say. It's become a catchphrase. But I got a lot out of watching RuPaul's Drag Race because it made me realize that there's a line that she, he, whatever you want to, I guess she if you're referring to the drag persona, he if you're referring to his day-to-day life, says, which is, you're born naked, everything else is drag. And I like that. And it's a similar concept with D&D, where you kind of, as you role play ideas, you come to realize that, you are whoever you decide to be. And by exploring other ways of being, it helps you define more who you are when you're not. You come to kind of understand yourself better. And I think it's quite a useful tool for everyone to play with that concept, to therefore come to more of an understanding of yourself by exploring other ways of being.
There's a line in a book by Terry Pratchett. The book is called Hogfather. It's one of my favorite books.
I watched the movie, I think. Yeah, there's a movie, right?
Yes, there's a movie. Which, when they're talking about the concept of belief, and a character says, you need to believe in things that aren't true. How else can they become? And I think that at the core of it is part of what's so attractive for a lot of people, is even the people who just want to be, a version of themselves, a self-insert who happens to be good at swinging a sword or something like that. But, it's a vehicle to believe in a better version of yourself in your eyes. And when you can actualize it in the form of a character, I really think it helps people believe it can be possible in the real world, and therefore becomes.
I think it's quite interesting to see what people's first character is, because it's a reflection of who they'd like to be, I think, in so many ways. And after that after they get that out of their system, then they explore other aspects of their own psyche. But the first one is, I really wish I was, big and strong and said exactly what I mean. Or I wish I was sneaky, or, that I was particularly good at convincing people. Like, it's...
My first character was a pompous ass who just happened to be good at swinging a sword.
But you probably wish you were that you had presence and importance.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Once you got it out of your system, you explored other ideas.
Oh yeah.
Because in real life, it's funny. It's like an itch that once you scratch, if you don't do something like this, you might never scratch that itch of being recognized as someone of authority. Let's say.
Yeah.
Right. If that never happens to you in real life, you might seek it forever. But if you play it in D&D and you see actually, it's not as fun as I thought it would be. I got what I wanted and it's okay, but I'm more interested in this. And you get it out of your system in a way, which I think is really interesting for your own personal development as a human being outside of the game.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But have a think about people you've introduced to the game and the first character they chose to be. Is it in an aspect of what they don't really have as much in real life, but they really wish they did?
Yeah, I guess so.
Am I wrong? I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
One person who shall remain nameless again has roleplayed big, strong warriors both times. So,
I went to big, strong, dumb warrior. Because I don't really want to be as smart as I am sometimes. You know what I mean? I wanted to take off the burden of being the decision maker and just being kind of smash, Hulk smash.
Why do you think I made that character with the head injury?
But funny enough, now that I'm playing this character, I'm deep down, that's not what I want. I like thinking. So, my next character is probably going to be a rogue or a bard or something that is more of the investigative, face of the party. Because as much as I might want to be a big, strong, and beautiful, it's not really it's not my wheelhouse. It's just something. It was fun to try it out because it's not. I'm not 6'4", handsome and dumb. That's not really me. But I played it for a little bit, and it was kind of fun to explore that. But funny enough, now I've drifted back towards more something closer to what I would be in real life, I think.
Well, that's the thing. At the end of the day, what is attractive about D&D is you have that freedom. it's the only game I can think of that offers that amount of creative liberty. And I think that's what sets it apart. So on a slightly different note, I think something that isn't often looked at. Everyone talks about the deep and meaningful side of it, and rightly they should. It's the first and foremost. But something that's often glossed over is the opportunities for comedy.
It can get a little bit out of hand. Like, it's really good fun, but I think if you go too far with it, it takes you out of pretending like it's real. Yeah, you have to be able to have a little bit of suspension of disbelief, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I'll give you an example. So in my recent game, I had my players use a rowboat to get out to this rock that's also a bird colony.
Okay.
And I designed a mechanic where the rock is covered in bird shit. So whenever they move, they have to make a check to see if they're not going to slip and land on their ass.
Okay.
And so I said, this is just a constant thing. It's this one little rock because it's covered in bird shit. And a fight broke out. And one of the players had a very real possibility of dying. And it was tragic but hilarious in the fact that the healer tried to, had this big speech, was like, I get up, I look at her, I see she's like, I'm not losing you too, I'm not losing you, and then she just slipped and landed on her ass. So yeah, no, you obviously don't want to go over the line, but sometimes stuff just happens of its own accord that you could not prepare for, and you wouldn't have wanted to prepare for either. Sometimes shit just goes south in a major way. And honestly, I think if our real world, had that kind of magic and, craziness, situations like that might happen.
Oh, yeah, and stupid shit happens all the time in the real world, And humor is part of the real world,
I mean, in your game, I created a Molotov cocktail out of lantern oil.
And I like the rule of cool. So there was no specific rules for that, but it sounded fun, so you let it happen. As a concept, it's quite fun. In hindsight, I think I made it too powerful. Made you sort of win a little too much with it. But it was a cool idea. It was an interesting use of the environment and the situation. I think that goes a long way. Rewarding intelligent attempts to use reality or fake reality to your advantage, right? Rather than I'm gonna use this rule in this way because it fits, it works, I can cheat the system, the maths works out well. No, it was a specific situation where you had access to something because it was there, and you had an idea to use it to your advantage, and it sounded fun, so why not?
I think the whole balancing thing comes with experience, and
Yeah.
something I struggled with initially when my players did that sort of thing. But it's just something that comes with time. It's like, okay, that was too powerful that time. Someone does something similar next time, to scale it back.
Nerf it a little bit. Yeah, and it's funny. It's once again something that I'm learning more and more every year that I live. It's just how important practice is. You can learn by theory as much as you want, but ultimately, the artistic level of talent comes from trying and repetition and learning from your mistakes. And getting there's a German word for it, Fingerspitzengefühl, I think, if I pronounced it correctly. I'm sure John will correct me. I always get it wrong.
Apologies to our German viewers.
But it means fingertip feel, right? When you get enough experience with something that you know exactly what to do instinctively, not consciously, because you've done it enough times that you're it just happens, and that can only happen with practice.
Oh, muscle memory, right? This is a muscle too, technically.
Well, no, not technically, figuratively. There is sort of a use it or lose it aspect of it that things get better only with usage, which is frustrating as fuck, because sometimes you just want to be talented immediately at something because you can see it in your mind how it work out, but then in the moment, you can read how to ride a bicycle, but it's not until you do it that you know how to
Honestly,
do it.
I'd settle for being able to not do something that I'm good at for a while and then still be as good at it when I come back.
That's true. It does stick after you learn it. I guess that's
Not all
that's the
things
good
stick.
aspect.
That's what I mean. Certain things you sit back up at the table and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing anymore.
I think most things that you sink a good amount of hours in, it lingers. That I guess that's the reward. It might take 1,000 hours to build up to a good level of talent, but then it's hard to lose that. You might get rusty, but you're never a beginner again. So there's an interesting aspect to that. But yeah. So I guess we've kind of veered off in lots of funny directions. But have you played any other role-playing games other than Dungeons and Dragons?
Not tabletop.
Okay.
I mean, I think this is part of what led me to D&D is I always preferred role-playing video games, I think, above other ones. Ones that have choices and dialogue trees and things that...
A story. It's about having a good story.
Yeah. I mean, how many times did you play and replay Vampire the Masquerade?
About 4 or 5 times at least. It was such a good, compelling story, and I'm talking about the first one, the one that was released to coincide with the Millennium, like New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Because it was based on a story to do with the Millennium.
With hands that looked like oven mitts.
Yeah, and it was... But it was...
1999, ladies and gentlemen.
It was an
the year of
amazing
graphics.
tech for the time.
Oh, yeah.
They had lip-synced facial animations, and it was based on the Quake 2 engine, I think. Anyway, and it was such a cool story, and as a game, it was all right. It wasn't... It didn't blow the pants off or anything, but because the story was amazing, that almost didn't matter. Like I don't know. I felt like I was the character, and I wanted to get the character his goals. I wanted to make sure the character got what he wanted out of life.
I've definitely felt that way before. My second favorite game is Divinity Original Sin 2, which is basically as close as you could possibly get to Dungeons and Dragons in a video game format. And funnily enough, the company that made Divinity Original Sin 2 is going to be releasing Baldur's Gate 3, which is literally set in a D&D
Dungeons
set.
and Dragons,
But people like choice. I mean, I don't know who was it who said that people hate choices, but...
well, that's the funny thing. So the latest Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, really cool story. I like the game a lot, but at the same time, the amount of choices it gave you, but that didn't actually matter, left me feeling a little bit lost. I don't know if you got that. There was I don't know what the right thing to say here is. I want to choose what the right thing is, but I don't know what the right thing is. It doesn't feel...
It wasn't pretty obvious?
A lot of the time I felt like I wasn't sure.
Interesting.
And sometimes you'd pick an dialogue option, and it didn't matter. Either way, you were going to get a particular outcome.
I think this is one of the things that actually sets D&D apart. It's how many times has a video game said, NPC says something, and then your character, the dialogue tree of agree with them or disagree with them is well, I don't kind of like what they said about this, so I think I should disagree, and then the character stabs them in the chest. It's no, that was way too vague. So, in D&D, if someone says, what are you gonna do if you march into that village? It's I'm gonna do my job. You can say, are you gonna slaughter the civilians, or are you going to, just conquer the city? And he's and the character, oh no, and the NPC can say, what? No, what do you think I am, a monster?
'Cause, I mean, there's a real person, so it's adaptive quite quickly. Whereas in a video game, you NPC asks you something and it says yes or no, and you're like, I guess no, and you click no, and it doesn't. Your character doesn't say no. It goes like, why don't you go fuck yourself?
Yeah.
And like go fuck your mother as well. And if I could, I would murder your entire family. And you're like, no, like that's no way. I just wanted a flat no.
I wonder if that's the perception that people don't like choice. People don't like choice in their content because, people who create this content have the impression that people don't like choice because up until recently, they haven't been able to feel like they made meaningful ones.
It's a funny, like, AI. I don't think AI is good enough to give too much freedom.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of video games where they kind of give you too much sandbox, where a little bit more of a path, a little bit more railroading would help, purely because the game's just not good enough to be completely open.
It eclipses the limits of the technology.
Yeah.
You can't eclipse imagination.
Yeah. So it's a funny art being able to kind of keep within just the right amount of freedom to make it feel meaningful whilst retaining a cohesive story. So I think that they should focus quite a bit on that. But so I guess at some point it will be just like do we want our entertainment to be just like real life though? Maybe if it was just as clever as real life, then it would also become very stressful to make decisions.
Maybe if there was like a setting. It's like, oh, I've had a particularly good day today. I'm ready to have my mind challenged. Or, oh no, I just worked 12 hours in a factory. I want to pretend, that there is no money in the world and everyone wants to sleep with me.
That's good fun. What do you love about D&D?
If I had to condense it into one sentence, it would just one word. It would be the freedom.
Freedom.
It can be whatever I want it to be and still follow logical parameters. And that's something that always bothers me. When I make a criticism of a piece of less than realistic cinema, or when you say of The Last Jedi or something, it's like hyperspace travel doesn't work like that. You can't ram because they're not literally traveling to light speed there. Someone's like, oh, it's a movie about space wizards, or like.
I never understood people like getting lippy about someone having a legitimate criticism of someone breaking lore. Like, yeah, I know that it's a fucking movie about Jedis, but if Harry Potter suddenly appeared and Expelliarmus Palpatine's lightsaber out of his hands, people would go, that's lame. And there's a degree of that even within sci-fi. Like, and that I think they
best thing
did
I can compare, and I wrote an essay about this actually just to help vent my thoughts. I might publish it at some point, but so I replaced movie or cinema with a game of sports. People watch sports all the time. I don't see the appeal personally, but I understand that people do enjoy that. If Wayne Rooney, in the middle of a match, took out a knife and stabbed one of the enemy players in the chest, that would make the game stop. It's like, wait, no, you definitely can't do that.
Yeah.
Now that's an and if I turned to someone who said,
without going that far, he can't pick up the ball with his hand and go score a try because it's fucking football.
Exactly. And if someone complained about that, and I turned to that person and said, it's a field of artificial grass where a bunch of men have decided to kick an inflated piece of rubber for no reason in order to score an imaginary number of points. Why are you taking this so realistically? That'd be a stupid argument.
Yeah.
And so the best way to look at any universe, cinematic or role-playing or otherwise, is like a real-life game. Let's go a bit more abstract still. Chess. How much can a pawn move in chess?
Well, one space or two spaces if it's his first move.
Correct. And if someone were to move 2 spaces on a non-first move?
That wouldn't be allowed.
Exactly. Now, let's compare science fiction to game of chess where we've said, okay, you know what? Pawns can move 3 spaces.
Yeah, a world has to abide by its own rules.
Its own rules, yes. And those rules can be whatever you want at the start, but once you lock them in, that is what the rules are. And I think it's good to have rules because then it creates meritocracy in the characters. When someone wins, you know they didn't cheat.
Because I think it's just lazy writing. I'm seeing a lot in modern TV shows or movies where they'll have an idea for a scene and write the story to make that scene happen.
Yeah.
As opposed to write the story and see where it leads, and if it leads somewhere cool, exploring that idea. So they'll be like, wouldn't it be amazing if the spaceship did this? Let's make it happen. Like, and there's no question about whether or not it would fit or not. Like, I want to see this happen on the screen, so therefore I'm going to make it work. But if it breaks lore, if it breaks the rules of the world you set up, people that care about the world will be taken out of it because they cared enough to learn the rules by which the world exists. And so they'll be taken out of the experience by going, oh, that wouldn't happen because of everything else you told us about the physics of this world or the magic of this world. That couldn't possibly happen. And so they're taken out of it. So the true fans are taken out of it. I guess the people that are just going out of it to see some cool explosions don't give a shit.
And it's not saying you can't break the rules, but you can't really break the rules. I don't remember where I read it, but someone said something. It was in relation to plot twists, but I think it relates to a breaking of the rules as well. A good plot twist should make you say, what the hell? And then should make you say, of course.
Okay.
It's like, let's go back to the football analogy. You can't, pick up a ball and handball it, but if someone, if there is a rule that says you can't have a dog as a player. No, there isn't. So if
I'm sure there is, but okay. Like, I get what you're trying to say.
So finding ways to break the rules without technically actually breaking them in the, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a real life, or not real life example, but a story related.
At the end of a plot twist, you kind of want to say, how did I not think of this?
Exactly.
Not, why did anyone think of this? You don't want to be left like this is so stupid and lame. I wish no one had written this.
Yeah. Or when a character does something that wasn't thought possible, I don't know, cast a spell that's never been cast before. But then if they can explain it well, it's like, just no one had just tried this before. Like, I get it now.
Yeah, that's you have to feel happy and rewarded by the plot twist. It's like those kind of mystery books that it got made fun of in the past. I mean, the movie Murder by Death is like a satire of the entire mystery scene where, people would write mysteries where they didn't give you enough information to solve the murder. And the character at the end would like reveal who the murderer was by information that you didn't get as a viewer. And you'd be like, fuck, I could have solved it if I knew that. And that's not cool. You want people to, if there's a mystery, for example, to have seen all the clues but still not understand and be surprised by the outcome. That's good writing. As opposed to, I'm going to avoid telling them all this information because otherwise they would solve it. And it's only going to be revealed at the end. It's that kind of attitude.
I think and relating it back to D&D, you can't do that in D&D. You can't withhold that kind of information, or a good DM shouldn't do that.
Well, you might have your players just give up and fuck off somewhere you didn't even write if you don't give them enough clues.
Yes, but there's no way, if you do it right, there's no way players can feel like they weren't given something, or that the rug was pulled out from under them if you do it right. Now, obviously, you can sometimes pull some bullshit and say like, oh, the bad guy gets away anyway, your counterspell doesn't work. But in reality, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, as much as possible. And it's fun to have to go back and, like, as a DM, I think, I didn't realize this right away. It's part of the fun to have to go back to your writing desk and be like, okay, they just killed the bad guy. What do I do? Like, what would happen? Like, they totally outsmarted this asshole and killed him. So what would happen from the story from here on? Can he come back in some way?
That actually happened to me. This is a really funny story. So I had a player run into this mysterious figure in a backroom gambling area of this inn. And they didn't know, and I don't think I ever did tell them that that figure was actually Asmodeus, which is a version of Lucifer, like the devil.
Yeah, the highest devil or whatever.
And the devil challenged the character to a game of chess. He was supposed to lose. So the way I had set it up was I found a chess, like downloadable chess game, like one of those free ones. Set it to like maximum difficulty, and then whatever the player did, I would do, and then whatever.
Let the AI okay.
At one point though, I don't know if I misclicked or something, but I did a different move, and then the move started progressively getting more and more different, and so I couldn't use that move set, and so I had to rely on my own chess skills, which are non-existent. And this guy, turns out, is actually fairly good at chess. This player. So he beat the devil at chess at like level fucking 3. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna rip up this entire manuscript of shit that I had planned.
Funny. And he doesn't know he was playing the devil.
No, I don't think I ever told him. He had to drop out a little while after that.
It's good fun. It's an interesting opportunity. I think interactive storytelling is an interesting idea.
I think it's never going back to what I said earlier, it's never taken off before because it's never been able to be done at the level that it needs to be done.
Elaborate. What do you mean?
Well, it was going back to what we said about the dialogue trees, and you say disagree, and it tells him to fuck his mother. That was the limitations of the video game.
Right, but the thing about D&D is that it could have existed 1,000 years ago. Because it's just people speaking to each other. You don't need the video games to exist. So it's interesting that as an art form, as an idea, it's only really arisen now. I don't think there's anything equivalent going back in time. I think there's occasional improv going back quite a while, maybe historically, but not as a game.
Well, how do we know? Well, I don't think in the last 2,000 years it could have existed because pretending or, having independent thought was seen as blasphemy for that entire time, right?
Yeah, maybe.
But do we truly know if the...
But it's interesting that we hadn't come up with interactive storytelling, like storytelling where other people join in and sort of redirect the story. Like, it didn't necessarily have to be a game with, demons and dragons and devils, which might not have been approved by the church for about 1,000 years. But, interactive acting, like even improv, I don't know. It's interesting.
From my limited historical knowledge, actors were looked down upon. I mean, they were a source of entertainment, but they were not
in the past. Sure. But it's the fact that it's a new idea is interesting in and of itself.
It's possible it has something to do with the fact that for the first time in the last 100 years, we've been able to truly become more sedentary as a species. I mean, if you have to work from sunrise till sunset harvesting a meager crop...
Rich people have been able to play weird games forever because they have the leisure time. Like, if chess exists, if, Monopoly exists, it's interesting that interactive storytelling took this long to come out.
I mean, again, no one's surprised that mathematics took this long to be figured out and to be discovered over time.
Well,
Is it?
most of mathematics was figured out by like Newton's time, which was a long time ago. Like, I mean, there's new stuff, but like a lot of what most people that will ever live today, the amount of math that they will almost be able to remember is not beyond what Newton figured out in the 1700s, right? And he did that by himself during a plague. Newton did most of his discoveries during something kind of like the pandemic we're having now. He left London because it was full of sick people, and he invented a bunch of stuff because he was fucking bored in the middle of nowhere.
Died a virgin, didn't he, as well?
He was weird. He's a weird person. But clever people tend to... Like, the cleverer you are, the weirder you tend to be for some reason. I think it's kind of like a... If your brain's running at 100%, it tends to do... You tend to not do some of the more normal stuff that well.
Oh. Sorry.
Jesus Christ. It's almost exorcist level. Just kidding. You're nursing your whiskey there. I think I'm kind of drunk, but you're still on your first sip.
I mean, what a dad. I swear to God, every time I take more than a tiny sip of anything, I get accused of being an alcoholic by everyone in the family but you.
You gotta get that freedom. Just like, who gives if you've learned anything from D&D, surely it's like, who gives a shit? I can be whoever I want.
Yeah, but what's the saying? Old habits die hard.
Sure. I mean, don't become an actual alcoholic, but like, whether people think you're something or not is irrelevant to whether you are.
Yeah, I'm just savoring it, I guess. It's
no. I'm not saying down it. I'm just thinking about my self-control, about how much I've drunk so far. Anyway, cool. So, what's next? Like, you're running a game.
Yeah.
Well,
if anyone does care to have a look at this, I'm streaming the game. So it's based off of the new book that came out, Mythic Odysseys of Theros, which is based off of a Magic the Gathering set, which is based off of ancient Greece. And that's a setting that doesn't get explored enough, I think. Because ancient Greece is my jam. I still remember the VHS tapes Mom had of that Italian portrayal of the Odyssey done in the 60s that we had from the way back. So, and I remember
have it on tape?
I remember seeing it on TV.
We watched it, but I don't know if we had it on tape. It's interesting. Yeah, no, it was pretty good. It was funny. The fight scenes were terrible.
I don't remember the fight scenes. I remember mainly dialogue, which I suppose was the limit of the technology at the time. But so I love
fantasy tends to be mostly Nordic fantasy. They focus on the dragons and elves and pixies and so on, as opposed to nymphs and minotaurs and.
Which is why doing something again. What I said earlier, I'm a convention bucker first and foremost. So it's conventional to do Nordic fantasy at the moment. So I was like, flip the table. Let's do something unique, and also. Something that's become pervasive in fantasy in general, but specifically Nordic fantasy because it's so common, is the forced injection of steampunk into it. Which just annoys me because I get it, but at the same time, it's everywhere. You can't do fantasy now without not having airships and, over-elaborate clockwork pistols and stuff like that because, you gotta appeal to that demographic as well. The demographic is like, swords are dumb. Why can't I just have a gun?
There's a bit of an increase in that. People want gunpowder and things. Yeah.
I think as we get more into the future, it's harder to accept stuff.
I mean, if you're trying to escape, like, to a different kind of world, like, if you want guns, go to futuristic settings, really.
I think people just like guns, but so you can't really do that and make it believable in an ancient Greek setting, because for fuck's sake, they're still using bronze.
Yeah.
So that was something that was really attractive for me for that particular setting. My Twitch channel, hot_LAV4, spelling hot lava, all lowercase, is where I stream it every Sunday. But yeah, what next is basically, I mean, it'd be nice to achieve Critical Role level notoriety, and again, another thing that was attractive of the Theros setting is it's starkly different. So I might stand a chance of being set apart, but even if it doesn't, go anywhere, begging your pardon, like that, it's just, well, it's what you said about why DMing is so fun. You've made this thing, and you want to share it with everybody.
Yeah, it's an invitation to your mind in a way. Sort of like a secret garden of your own thoughts that you're inviting people in, which I think is quite a good aspect. Something else I've realized is that being a nerd is just being someone who falls in love with things. Sometimes obsessively so, but it's like this is so cool, I want to spend hours and hours thinking about it.
And yet we look down upon that. Not us specifically, but as people.
It's a weird attitude, but I think it's changing because a lot of it's funny though. It goes in waves. Certain things become okay. Like D&D is now okay, whereas where the people that grew up trying to play in D&D grew up playing it, at least in the United States, was seen as like devil worship or like something horrible. Now it's something that famous actors do on live streams. But yeah, it's very segmented. Like certain things will become fashionable, but slowly. But I think geeks are kind of taking over a little bit because they tend to own all the larger corporations these days. It's not, when the richest people in the world are nerds, I think suddenly everybody else is like, oh. I think it's made a change.
I think part of the trouble as well is that the overwhelming majority of paying customers are still not necessarily that geeky, and so there's been a real dumbing down of geek culture. It's been made less intelligent.
I don't know about that, but I think anything that becomes popular tends to get diluted, because to appeal to more and more people, it has to be less and less specific or interesting so that it covers all the bases. I think that's just what happens, which is why the internet is nowhere near as cool as it was when it was barely functioning, because now everybody is on it and it's all about, I'll Google something and I'll get like the results that an average mom in the US would want to see if she Googled that word, as opposed to what the word actually means, because the people that want what the word actually means, as opposed to the brand that has stolen it as an idea, are me and 10 other guys, or people, or whatever, as opposed to hundreds of thousands of consumers that want to buy the product or the brand that's chosen that word as its name. Right? You get outdone by those numbers. And that's what happens with anything that gets popularized. And it's okay. It's just about...
It's possible that's one of the other aspects that's appealing about D&D. Again, it's going back to it being whatever you want it to be. It can be as popular as it wants, but in my game, I can still have the political plot line that's all about, discussions and being arbiters and all of that, and stuff that, the average person might find boring or whatnot. Whereas another media art form, I don't know, superheroes, for example, it's like it started off as like gritty plot lines in the 80s about murder mysteries and things like that, and now we've got Chris Pratt shooting a rainbow that spells 420 yellow swag out of his ass while he does a whip and a nay-nay or whatever.
Huh? I'm guessing that was a weird metaphor.
That was a
as opposed to
hyperbole.
an actual. Okay.
But seriously, look at Guardians of the Galaxy. It is ridiculous and not in a good way.
The first one was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. It got a bit silly. I think
it's all lowbrow humor now. At least Marvel
Right.
is, and that's my gripe with it. But
well, everything is. Even if you look at new comedies, there's no sophisticated comedy anymore. It's all kind of cheap laughs and toilet humor. And funny enough, I'm all for toilet humor, but not if it's the only humor I get.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. But it doesn't have to be like that with D&D. Part of the reason why some things lose their original base when they get popular is they lose what made them popular in order to appeal to everybody.
Yeah, it's a drift that happens as whoever's in charge tries to grow something, and to do that, they changed its fundamentals that got it to where it was.
And that certainly happened in D&D in terms of they made it more accessible and they lowered the complexity of the rules in order to make it appeal to a wider base. But again, if I want to decide that, I have different specific rules, like it encourages house rules. If I want to decide that, you can try to parry and we have a complex system for actual sword fighting, I can do that. It takes a good DM, but basically, if you're willing to put in the work, it's as complicated or as you would like it to be, or maybe not. Maybe you don't like that you have to roll dice to determine how much a health potion gives you. So you know what? You can just say health potions give the max amount. It'll affect the balance, but you can counter that as well. And
it encourages you to create whatever it is that you want to create based on the baseline. And then if you have people that are willing to play in your game, cool.
And by virtue, it's immune to the dilution effect. To some degree, I think. And that's why I think it's gonna... I don't know how popular it will get overall, but I think it's immune from losing its original audience because of that.
It'd be interesting to see where it goes in the next few years, whether more shows come up that are able to replicate Critical Role level of audience and fan base, whether just kind of that's the show that it is. Whether anyone is able to do something new and interesting that takes it even to the next stage. I think it's an interesting space to watch because there's not much media that's unpredictable and interactive to that degree. It's almost like a sport.
Yeah.
Because the people playing it don't know for sure what's going to happen. And you're getting to watch it unfold. So it's like nerds' version of football, really. I think there's an interesting aspect to that.
Oh yeah, 100%. And if someone is gonna come along and be a parallel to Critical Role, it's gonna have to be something that's very different. And that's, again, circling back to it, part of why I decided on the ancient Greek setting.
Cool.
It would need to stand apart.
Hopefully, I think I got some new equipment. We're gonna try and run live stream games and just see what happens.
I got some ideas for one shots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That should be good fun. I think I like the idea of getting people watching. I think it's interesting to bring them along with you on a journey. You're telling a story. It's like writing a book collaboratively, and other people get to kind of listen in as the writing team writes it. It's almost like being inside the writing room for a TV show, right?
I think it's even better because there's no one in the writing room that's saying, no, we have to have a mechanical spider for Superman to fight. Real reference, look it up.
Should be good fun. I am well drunk. I think not having lunch made a big difference. Two drams of whiskeys, and I'm pretty fucked right now.
Well, we have snacks upstairs.
Excellent. Well, thank you for participating in this.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
I thought it would be fun to talk about. It's something that I'm becoming more involved with because I think it's really good fun. So thank you for kind of pushing it a little bit. It was both you and my friend / business partner Zach that convinced me to play, and made me realize just how interesting a tool it could be in self-exploration and learning how to play with others in certain things, and just having something that's really, really entertaining to do and watch. So yeah, if you guys are thinking about playing or participating in a game, give it a go because it's really good fun.
If you not too familiar with how it all works, honestly, I learned a lot of the rules just watching stuff like Critical Role. I'll be shameless here and plug my own stream as well. Again, hot underscore LAV4. What I think is the appeal of that is we're way more ragtag. We don't have a professional operation, so you might find it more accessible in that respect. But if not, if you just want a clean and cut experience, definitely check out Critical Role, because what Andres said about the practical applications, that's really useful, because it's one thing to read a rule on a page, it's another to see it being applied in a real life circumstance.
It's always useful to see people that are great at what they do their thing. And that whole team, but in particular the Dungeon Master, loves the game, loves to play it, loves to explore it. And it's a good reference to have. It's like having a really good high school arts teacher or, math teacher, whatever. Like having someone that really enjoys it and is passionate about it teach you, then your game is better. Your thing becomes better because you have that inspiration of someone who is genuinely, enthralled by the art of what they're doing. I think that's important, and it's hard to find if you in general in life, but in particular Dungeons and Dragons, if you find someone that plays, the likelihood they'll be amazing at it isn't that great, right? They might be good at it, but amazing, hard to find. So having that as something to refer to see how good it can be, it can help you in your own art. Something to strive for, I think.
I agree.
Cheers. Well, thank you for joining.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Sorry.